I can't believe I'm even sitting here telling you this, but my life changed forever because of a single transaction declined message on a tiny plastic screen. One minute I was looking into the eyes of the woman I thought was my soulmate, and the next, I was watching her walk out of a five-star restaurant, and my life, simply because she thought my bank account had hit zero. She didn't even wait for a second swipe or a phone call to the bank. She just saw that red text, called me a pathetic loser, and vanished. But here is the part that's going to melt your brain. I'm not a loser. In fact, I'm the CEO of a tech conglomerate worth more than her entire family tree. And that declined card was actually a security freeze on a black card with no limit. So I have to ask you guys right now, before we even get into the insanity that followed. If the person you loved dumped you the very second they thought you were poor, would you ever take them back? Or would you dedicate your entire life to making sure they regretted that moment forever? Because what I did next wasn't just cold. It was a calculated masterpiece of revenge that stripped her of everything she ever valued. Let's go back to the beginning, so you can understand how I ended up in that restaurant in the first place. My name is Ethan, and for the last 3 years, I've been living a double life. See, I grew up with nothing. I watched my mom work 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. So when my software company blew up and I became a billionaire in my late 20s, I didn't turn into some flashy guy with gold chains and a fleet of Lamborghinis. I stayed humble. I kept my old college apartment for a while. I drove a modest SUV. And most importantly, I never told the women I dated how much money I actually had. I wanted to find someone who loved Ethan, the guy who likes old movies and burnt toast, not Ethan, the guy with the 9-figure net worth. That's when I met Sarah. Sarah was breathtaking, sophisticated, sharp, and seemingly perfect. We met at a local art gallery, and for the first year, things were incredible. I told her I worked as a mid-level consultant for a tech firm. It wasn't technically a lie, I just didn't mention I owned the firm. She seemed fine with it at first, but as time went on, I started noticing little things. She would constantly talk about her friends' boyfriends who bought them designer bags, or she'd drop hints about how successful men should carry themselves. I ignored the red flags because I was blinded by love. I thought, maybe she just wants security. For our 2-year anniversary, I decided it was time. I was going to propose, and on that same night, I was going to reveal the truth. I was going to tell her that the consultant she was dating actually owned the penthouse suite in the building she admired every day. I booked a table at the most exclusive spot in the city, a place where you usually need a 6-month waiting list. I wore my best suit, though I still kept it low-key, and I had the ring, a 5-carat diamond that costs more than a suburban home, hidden in my pocket. We ordered the finest wine, the best steaks, the whole 9 yards. The bill came out to about $3,000. I pulled out my card, the one linked to my private wealth account, and handed it to the waiter with a smile. A few minutes later, he came back looking awkward. He leaned in and whispered, "I'm sorry, sir, but the transaction was declined." I laughed it off, thinking it was just a routine fraud alert because I hadn't used that specific card in a few weeks. I told him to try it again. It declined a second time. Suddenly, the atmosphere at the table shifted. Sarah's face went from glowing to ghostly pale, then turned into a mask of pure disgust. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't offer to split the bill. She stood up, grabbed her purse, and looked at me like I was a cockroach. She said, "I knew it. I knew you were a fraud. I've wasted 2 years on a man who can't even afford a dinner? Don't ever call me again, Ethan. I don't date beggars." She walked out right then and there, leaving me sitting with a declined card and a diamond ring in my pocket. I sat there in stunned silence for a good 10 minutes. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from my bank's security team asking if I had authorized a large purchase. I tapped yes, and the hold was lifted instantly. I could have run after her. I could have shown her my banking app with the 80 balance. I could have shown her the ring. But in that moment, the scales fell from my eyes. She didn't love me. She loved the idea of what I could provide. And the moment she thought the well was dry, she didn't just leave. She insulted my very existence. So I paid the bill, tipped the waiter $1,000 for the trouble, and went home to my modest apartment. But I didn't sleep. I stayed up all night planning. See, Sarah worked in high-end real estate. She was obsessed with status and climbing the ladder. She had recently been gunning for a massive commission on a luxury estate downtown. A property that just happened to be owned by one of my subsidiary holding companies. She didn't know I owned it. She thought she was dealing with a faceless corporate entity. That's when the plan started to form. If she wanted a billionaire, I was going to give her one, but not the one she expected. To make this work, I had to create a character that Sarah would find irresistible. I spent the next few days working with my head of PR. We created a buzz in the real estate circles about a reclusive European investor who was moving his entire operations to the city. I didn't use my own name yet. I used the name of my holding group's primary director, a man named Arthur Vance, who was actually my right-hand man and mentor. I had Arthur reach out to Sarah's firm specifically, mentioning that he was looking for a very specific type of agent, someone ambitious and hungry. Sarah, being exactly those things, fell for the bait immediately. She spent weeks preparing presentations, buying new clothes on credit cards she couldn't afford to pay off, and telling everyone that she was about to land the deal of a century. She even posted on social media about how hard work pays off, and how she had finally moved past the dead weight in her life, meaning me. Every time I saw her posts, it fueled my fire. I watched her buy a brand new Mercedes that I knew she was financing at a ridiculous interest rate, all because she was counting on a commission that didn't exist yet. She was building a house of cards, and I was holding the fan. In the meantime, I started hearing rumors about her new boyfriend, Marcus. Apparently, Marcus was telling people he was a venture capitalist, but my private investigators found out he was actually a professional con artist who targeted wealthy women. The irony was almost too much to handle. She had dumped a literal billionaire for a guy who was actively trying to figure out how much money she had. It was a perfect storm of greed meeting greed. To make it even more poetic, I instructed my legal team to start interest negotiations with Sarah's firm for a secondary property, a massive commercial plaza. I wanted her to feel like she was winning on all fronts. I wanted her to feel like the luckiest woman in the world before the floor fell out. I even sent anonymous flowers to her office, signed a friend, which she immediately assumed were from the billionaire investor she was trying to court. She bragged about those flowers on her Instagram story for 3 days straight. I watched her ego swell to a point where she was actually being rude to her assistants and coworkers, thinking she was now untouchable. She started wearing outfits that cost more than her monthly rent, taking out loans left and right to maintain this image of a top-tier agent for a billionaire client. She was so deep in the hole that only a massive commission could save her. I decided to wait until the night of the Grandview estate gala to let everything collide. I wanted the audience to be as large as possible. I wanted her downfall to be public, loud, and irreversible. I made sure the local business journals were invited, as well as every major player in the city's social scene. I also made sure that the catering was the exact same menu as the night she dumped me. The same wine, the same steaks. A little psychological warfare never hurt anyone. Now, I want to stop the story right there for a second because this is where things get really complicated. I was at a crossroads. Part of me wanted to just disappear and let her live her life, but the other part of me wanted to teach her a lesson she would never forget about greed and loyalty. I had the power to ruin her career, or the power to walk away. So I'm asking you guys right now, put yourself in my shoes. You've given 2 years of your life to someone you were literally about to propose, and they threw you away like trash over a technical error at a dinner table. Would you walk away and be the bigger person? Or would you use your resources to show them exactly what they lost? Drop a comment right now and tell me if I'm being a villain, or if she deserves what's coming next, because the next part of this story is where I stopped being the nice guy consultant. The very next week, I put my plan into motion. I contacted my lead acquisitions officer and told him we were going to personally oversee the sale of the Grandview estate, the property Sarah was trying to sell. I told him I wanted to meet the agent in person, but I would be acting as the silent primary investor, who remains behind a partition or in a separate room until the final signing. I also knew Sarah had started dating a guy named Marcus just 2 weeks after dumping me. Marcus was exactly her type. He drove a bright red Ferrari, which I later found out was leased, and posted photos of his watches on Instagram every hour. He was the rich guy she thought I wasn't. I made sure to invite them both to the final investor gala for the property launch. Through my connections, I ensured Sarah was told that the mysterious billionaire owner was interested in her work and might give her the exclusive listing for his entire portfolio if she impressed him at the gala. She was ecstatic. She thought she had finally made it. On the night of the gala, I arrived in a chauffeured Maybach, wearing a suit that cost more than her boyfriend's car. I stayed in the VIP lounge, watching through the glass as she strutted around with Marcus, bragging to everyone about how she was about to become the personal realtor for a real billionaire, not a broke loser, like her ex. I heard her tell a group of people, "You have to have standards. My last boyfriend couldn't even pay for dinner. Can you imagine?" My blood boiled, but I kept my cool. The time came for the big reveal. The host announced, and now the man of the hour, the owner of the Grandview estate and CEO of Nexus Holdings, Ethan Blackwell. The room went silent. I walked out onto that stage, and the look on Sarah's face was worth every cent I've ever earned. Her glass of champagne literally slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Marcus looked like he wanted to swallow his own tongue. I walked straight up to her, the crowd parting like the Red Sea. I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. I just looked at her, smiled, and said, "Hey Sarah. Sorry about the dinner last time. The bank freeze was a real pain, but I'm sure a woman of your standards understands how security works for accounts of this size." She tried to speak, her voice trembling. "Ethan? I didn't know. I was just stressed. I didn't mean those things." I ignored her and turned to her boss, who was standing right there. I told him, "I love this firm, but I have a strict policy about working with people who lack integrity. Since your lead agent here thinks beggars shouldn't be allowed in her circle, I think I'll take my $20 million portfolio elsewhere." Her boss's face turned purple. He fired her on the spot, right there in front of the entire elite social circle of the city. Marcus tried to step in, but I just glanced at his luxury watch and said, "Nice fake, man. The subdial is off by 2 millimeters." The silence in the room was deafening as they were escorted out by security. But the story didn't end that night. You see, I had done my homework. Sarah had put down a massive non-refundable deposit on a luxury apartment, assuming her commission from my estate would cover the rest. When I pulled the deal, her income vanished instantly. She was suddenly on the hook for hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt with no job and a blacklisted reputation. Every agency in the city heard about what happened at the gala. No one wanted to hire the woman who insulted a billionaire and cost her firm their biggest client. She was radioactive. As for Marcus, the moment he realized Sarah was broke and I was the real target, he disappeared. He didn't even pack his bags. He just left her with the lease on the Ferrari that he had put in her name using her credentials. She was being sued by the car dealership, the real estate firm, and her own landlord all at once. To add another layer to this, the art gallery where we first met was actually struggling. I bought the building and turned it into a community center for underprivileged kids who wanted to learn coding and business. I named it after my mother. When Sarah found out, she tried to use that as a way in, sending me letters about how inspired she was by my charity work. I didn't even open them. My legal team sent her a cease and desist because she was effectively stalking my office. I even found out she tried to sell the story to a tabloid for some quick cash, but since I own the majority share in the parent company of that tabloid, the story was spiked before it even hit the editor's desk. Every door she tried to open, she found it locked by me. A month later, I was sitting in my office when my assistant told me a woman was downstairs begging to see me. It was Sarah. She looked like a shadow of the woman I once loved. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by something cheap and worn. She was crying, telling me that she was being evicted and that she had nowhere to go. She actually had the nerve to ask me for a loan. I looked her in the eyes and remembered the way she looked at me in that restaurant. The pure disgust she felt for a man she thought had nothing. I told her, "Sarah, I spent 2 years trying to show you who I was, and you only cared about what I had. Now that I have everything and you have nothing, you finally want to know who I am? It doesn't work that way." I called security and had her removed from the building. It was the final closure I needed. I didn't feel happy seeing her suffer, but I felt a profound sense of justice. She had to learn that people are not assets to be traded when the market dips. In the weeks that followed, Sarah tried to call me 1,000 times. She sent long emails explaining how she was confused and how she always loved me. She even showed up at my old apartment, but I had already moved into my actual home months ago. She lost her job, her reputation in the high-end real estate world was trashed, and Marcus, the rich guy, dumped her the moment she couldn't help him get into elite circles anymore. It turns out, when you build a relationship on nothing but dollar signs, it collapses the moment the money stops moving. I eventually donated the ring to a charity auction, where it raised enough money to build a new wing for a children's hospital. I realized that the declined message wasn't a mistake. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. It was a filter that removed a person who never truly saw me. I'm now with someone who actually knows the real me. And funny enough, we met at a Greasy Spoon diner where I forgot my wallet on the first date just to see what she'd do. She just laughed, paid for my burger, and told me I could get the next one. That's how I knew she was the one. My new girlfriend, Maya, doesn't even know the full extent of my wealth yet, but she knows I'm a hard worker and a good person. And that's enough for her. We spend our weekends hiking or watching Netflix, and there's no pressure to be successful or elite. I've realized that the true luxury in life isn't a black card or a Maybach. It's being able to sit across from someone and know that if the world ended tomorrow and you lost everything, they would still be holding your hand. Sarah is still out there somewhere, likely trying to find the next Marcus to save her from the hole she dug herself into. I heard she's working at a local mall now selling shoes. I hope she's good at it, because she's going to be doing it for a long time. I hope one day she realizes that her standards were actually just shackles that kept her from finding anything real. I also made sure that the charity I donated the ring to sends out a monthly newsletter. I put Sarah on the mailing list so she can see exactly how much good that ring did. Good that she will never be a part of. It's a small, petty reminder, but after 2 years of her looking down on me, I think I've earned a little bit of petty. The moral of the story is pretty simple. Money can buy you a table at the best restaurant in the world, but it can't buy you a person who will stay at that table when the lights go out. If someone is only with you for your peak, they don't deserve to be there for your process. To all the people out there being judged for what's in their bank account, keep grinding, stay humble, and remember that your value isn't defined by a credit card transaction. Don't ever let someone's shallow perception of you become your reality. You are worth more than any number on a screen. Like this video if you think Sarah got exactly what she deserved. And hit that subscribe button if you want to hear more stories of people getting their karma in the most satisfying ways possible. What would you have done differently? Would you have given her a second chance? Or was the public reveal the right move? Share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. I'll be reading them. I'll see you all in the next story.